right now, the Eastern Cape Police Commissioner Nomthetheleli Mene has announced that additional resources will be allocated to crime hotspot areas ahead of the festive season. She says rural communities which are crime-ridden will be prioritized. Mene was speaking at the Safer Festive season campaign ahead of the festive season. The province has been experiencing concerning incidents of crime, which include mass killings and extortion-related cases. Let's now welcome forensic and crime expert, Mr. Rafadi, for further insight on this. Calvin, thank you so much for your time. Good afternoon. Look, it seems like violent crime has taken a new form and trend in the country, and one has to wonder what will actually happen as workers actually return to their villages. Do you think these proposed crime-fighting measures are actually going to be enough?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers. Yeah, no, indeed, we are sitting with a serious predicament. In fact, when you speak with the people on the ground that they're visiting home in Eastern Cape, most of them, they say, no, we do fear for our lives. We cannot be seen driving around in those areas because of there are so many guns, and then criminals take opportunities of such. So many, they fear for their life. And, you know, if you go even on Google search, you want to check the weather of Eastern Cape, or even issues of what you call just the news, you see mass shooting. It's incidents after incident, and horrific ones for them.
But I mean, Calvin, extortion-related crimes, which I suppose even police have a very difficult time tracking and dealing with, it presents, I suppose, even a bigger challenge, especially in cases where you hear that it's actually women-headed households or homes that are actually being targeted in these villages. Quite sad.
No, indeed, it's a very worrying situation. Our women are not feeling safe. They are targeted, and even small kids, and look at it, the situation even now, 5 matriculates have been raped. So it is a worrying issue in the Eastern Cape. But at the same time, we do note the tax teams that were sent there, and they did, you know, we will say it's a great job. I mean, we must give them due where is due. And, you know, even social development for the support, because they, remember, with the Suki, they took that small baby, and it's in the custody of social development, and including the media at large and the community, you know, to helping the police. But we always say, crime intelligence, guys, please don't go missing. And, you know, the ministry and even the provincial commissioner, they need to look at the issue that they need a permanent head of crime intelligence in the Eastern Cape. You cannot have constantly people acting on that position. It deters the morale of those who are even acting on those positions, or who are even supposed to be exercising their duties.
And credit them indeed, Calvin, but there is that other huge challenge on the part of law enforcement in these areas, being, of course, the ill-resourced and staffed issues are often far from communities, leaving them even more vulnerable, as well as the conversations from the relevant authorities have not really given any indication of how to address this decades-long challenge. We still have a single police station that is servicing about 10 townships and villages in some areas, which is quite an embarrassment for the country 30 years into democracy.
No, indeed, I fully agree. And I was worried when the minister in the ANC conference, the NEC conference, he said they still going to do a case study, you know, in what are the causes of some of these crimes in certain areas. And I think even when you go to ask a 14-year-old child, they will tell you that a gun is fired every 5 minutes. You just have to wait for another 2 minutes to, you know, for a gun to be fired. So there is no time, unless if he's talking about case study, he must give us a time on how long will that duration last. But just to, you know, just to answer your question, indeed, the resources are a problem. There are certain roads that we just learned from the Human Rights Commission that it's not easy for the police to patrol. But, you know, they've got horses, they've got dog units, they've got what you call scrambler motorbikes. So they need to deploy some of those resources and help the community. But at the same time, that's why we've been saying, let's flush out the guns from this area. The only way to flush out the guns is to declare a state of emergency. Then we can go on a stop and search, flush out these particular guns, then life can go back to normal after we take out these guns, because there are so many They are even cheap to find a particular firearms, illegal firearms. You just have to know the language to buy a firearm. And it is unacceptable.
You know, Calvin, I was just about to say exactly the same thing, because the other challenge that police have to deal with is the upsurge in gun violence. I mean, there are so many guns, as you've heard, as you've just pointed out, in the hands of criminals. And one then has to wonder, where is this sudden influx actually emanating from? Again, another angle of focus for police. And since reports are indicating that it's actually some of their own members who are guilty of selling these police-issued guns.
Yeah, you know, indeed, we do agree. There are rotten police out there. There are rotten military guys out there. But at the same time, we mustn't forget that automatic rifles, such as an AK, is prohibited in our country. Now, one has to also check where is that emanating from. Whilst we keep on blaming one direction, police. Let's also know that SADC region, the ex-militant, they bring this particular firearms and in cahoots with the criminals to commit certain crimes. And you know, it tantamounts to treason, because if you are from a military, from a foreign country or a political party and you commit crimes in our country, it also tantamounts to treason. But what I'm saying, let's flush out these guns, and you know, the ministries must stop blaming one another. No, it's a defense. They're enabling this particular firearm to be in the hands of criminals. No, it's the Syria private security. We are dealing with firearms. We don't know how many are out there. Let's go on a search and seizure and flush out. But it can only happen if we've got a multiplier force of the military through a state of emergency.
And that's exactly another point that I wanted to point out there, Calvin. We do have an army. Do these circumstances not provide for that situation being special enough for the army to be deployed in order to deal with some of these challenges?
No, indeed, they are. But the army, you can only deploy them for a certain period. And that's why we see criminals, you know, they not to say they are wiser, but what they do is once there's a particular threat or reaction of the military in an area, they move to another area, and then they wait for the deployment to end, and then they move back into the community and go back in terrorizing the community. So we need them as an extended force, multiplier force, so that with the police, we've got units that will deal with also POCA Act, prevention of organized crime. Whilst we're flashing the firearms, let's disarm them some of their assets, these guys. And you know, just before I forget, I got a very worrying call from the Eastern Cape, where I'm told that, you know, some of this horrific mass shooting, revenge killing, I call them, some boys, they believe that they need to kill a particular family because their child has infected them with HIV. I mean, what is that? You can see that the people living on the ground, there's not even enough education, and they just conclude with their own kangaroo court.
Very worrying indeed, Calvin. Thank you so much for your input this afternoon. That is Mr. Calvin Rafadi there, who's a crime and forensic expert on the recent crime upsurge in the country, particularly in villages.